The wait is over. Billionaire Terry Gou throws his hat into the ring to be Taiwan's next president. Take a look at how a Taiwanese startup is making critical tech to defend the country. Dozens of demonstrators take to the streets of Taipei to show their support for Taiwan's Metoo movement. Plus, every year the New York Mets baseball team celebrates Taiwan Day on their home turf at Citi Field. We've come to New York to find out what it's all about. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. The billionaire founder of Foxconn, Terry Gou, has officially thrown his hat into the ring to become Taiwan's next president. Our reporter Ed Moon was there for the announcement.
After months of speculation, Foxconn founder Terry Gou has announced a bid for the biggest job of his career. And he's chosen this venue, just a few hundred meters from the presidential office in Taipei, to announce that he's going to run to be Taiwan's next president in 2024.
我郭台铭今天要郑重地向各位报告，我决定以总统参选人的身份投入2024总统大选。
He's one of the most famous faces in Taiwan, known for building an electronics giant that makes everything from iPhones to electric cars. That name recognition gives him a higher profile than any other candidate for the presidential election next year. But he's entering a crowded race, in a situation that's never been seen before in Taiwanese presidential elections, with 4 candidates each polling over or near 10%. The ruling party's Lai Ching-te is the current favourite, with the 3 opposition candidates seemingly dividing support between them. But Gou doesn't seem too bothered about the opposition eating into each other's votes, and he says he's keen to work with both the Kuomintang's Hou Yu-yi and Ko Wen-je from the Taiwan People's Party.
我也将继续邀请在野阵营其他2位候选人一起坐下来，你喝咖啡，我喝奶茶，大家一起好好商谈国家大事。
So it's official. Terry Gou will join the race to be Taiwan's next president in 2024, assuming he gets the needed signatures. But now with 3 opposition candidates in the race, he faces a struggle to make it to the top of the pile. He'll perhaps be looking to make a deal, just like he does in business, so that he can end up as the opposition's main candidate and be the one who ends up winning in the end. Karma Shu and Ed Moon in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
The rest of Taiwan's presidential candidates are pushing hard to win over the country's agricultural heartlands. On a trip to the south, opposition Kuomintang candidate Hou Yu-yi said he'd raise farmers' pensions to at least $250 a month. Meanwhile, his opponent, ruling party candidate Lai Ching-te, says he'd modernize farming technology. Agriculture is only a small part of the economy, but about 10% of the population comes from farming households. Third-party candidate Ko Wen-je also said he's canceling trips to the U.S. and Southeast Asia to focus on campaigning in the center and south of the country, areas with strong agriculture sectors. Chinese warplanes spotted operating around Taiwan and Japan over the weekend could be practicing for a potential air blockade. That's according to military analysts here in Taiwan. These actions could push countries in the region to work more closely together. Jaime Okan has more.
So far this year, Taiwan has reported over 1,000 Chinese warplanes flying around the country. Everything from helicopters, drones, and fighter jets have flown missions, but this past weekend's activity is shedding lights on China's increasingly aggressive approach. On Saturday, Taiwan's military reported 20 Chinese warplanes breaching the country's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This is an area used by the military for defensive purposes, and it's not sovereign airspace. But what was different about Saturday's incursion was the flight path for 2 drones. They flew past Taiwan and towards nearby Japan. Some analysts say that the incursions amounted to a simulated air blockade of Taiwan, but not all agree.
These are not the kind of aircraft that can create a blockade on their own. It was clear that they were doing some kind of reconnaissance, either exercise or actually active operation, which is why they flew to an area outside of the ADIZ, which is where the Japanese MOD picked them up.
Taiwan is an island, which makes the threat of a possible air and sea blockade very serious. The country would be cut off from international supplies, and if a blockade were to be enforced, nearby countries like Japan would also be heavily affected. That's why both Japan and Taiwan have been investing more in air defense and anti-ship weapons that can prevent key shipping lanes from being closed. Some analysts say that that's not enough, and more investment is needed to monitor Chinese activity.
But the other two areas, which I think are very important, are investment into space in order to enhance the ISR and so intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting capabilities. This has been very clear in the latest national security strategy.
These capabilities would require increased investments in drones and satellites, and better information sharing between allies in the region. Those countries have been stepping up their defense as China's increased military activity is seen as a preview to a potential move to take Taiwan by force. That's why information sharing would help Taiwan better target and coordinate its defense response, giving it a better chance to prevent any attempted blockade.
I think most likely with a blockade specifically, Beijing is going to announce it ahead of time because there's going to be major disruptions to civilian traffic and supply chains. But I don't think the PLA is ready to do that. I think there's a lot that goes into it that they just haven't practiced yet.
While Chinese planes and warships continue to operate around Taiwan, a blockade does not appear to be imminent. Taiwan's military is working to keep one from ever happening, but more cooperation with neighbors would certainly help. Howard Zhang and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
The prospect of China forming a blockade around Taiwan is becoming a serious concern to many both at home and abroad. To discuss this more, I spoke with David Sachs, a fellow of Asia Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, to assess security concerns in the Taiwan Strait. What are the odds we might see another simulated blockade?
One of the things I think to keep in mind is that China has its own internal problems that it's going through right now, especially with the PLA rocket force. They were really the leading edge of that simulated blockade in terms of the missiles that they launched bracketing Taiwan. But now we've seen the top leadership of the PLA rocket force removed. I think there's an open question on whether if Xi Jinping wants to move forward with that kind of exercise.
Where are we in terms of security in the Taiwan Strait?
There is one party right now, and that is China, the People's Republic of China, that is not satisfied with the status quo. And we can see that in terms of the escalation of activity through Taiwan's air defense identification zone, both in terms of how often it is occurring and the types of flights and aircraft used in Taiwan's ADIZ. We have to come to terms with the fact that China right now is not satisfied with the status quo and sees it as both in their interest and something that's achievable to change the status quo.
What should Taiwan do to prevent conflict in the Taiwan Strait?
Part of Taiwan's effort needs to be on hard deterrence. The shared goal of the United States and Taiwan has to be that when Xi Jinping wakes up every morning, he looks across the Taiwan Strait and says, gee, I would really like Taiwan, but it's too difficult. And I have real doubts whether the PLA can achieve that.
That was Council on Foreign Relations fellow David Sachs in New York. The Army has begun a heavy artillery exercise in the southern county of Pingtung. The annual Tianlei drills started on Monday morning and will test the military's capabilities against amphibious attacks. Several kinds of artillery have been moved to the coast, including howitzers and self-propelled cannons. The exercise was originally set to take place over 2 days, but it was shortened to just 1 day due to the approach of Typhoon Saola. Taiwan's military has been ramping up its spending to protect the country. One professor turned entrepreneur is showing how private companies will play a larger role in defending Taiwan. Joyce Tseng reports.
Preparing to test the next generation of radars. These engineers from a young Taiwanese startup are developing anti-drone technology for military use. Leading the effort is Wang Yuju. He's a former professor from the California Institute of Technology.
I'm really interested in designing like a lot of wireless technology, so I think that's a good place to go. I think finally the industry is ready.
Wang started the company 5 years ago with about 30 engineers, some of whom were former students. But it's now grown into a 170-person multi-project team, 70% of whom are dedicated to research and development. Historically, Taiwan's military relied on equipment it developed on its own. But learning from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the effectiveness of small drones, Taiwan's military is looking to take commercial products and adapt them for military use. With Taiwan facing its own imminent threats from China, which has said it would take Taiwan by force, private companies here have an important role to play in defending the island nation.
那么有了军事的市场跟安全市场之后，这些业者，就是这些 enterprise， 他们就会有基础去发展商用的这个无人机，这是台湾的策略。
With more freedom to get creative, tech firms can come up with game-changing equipment, like this portable advanced radar system. And with Taiwan as a global leader in making electronics, especially the all-powerful semiconductor chip, companies like Wang's have a strong domestic supply chain to lean on. All these strengths have also caught the attention of new customers, like Taiwan's space program.
They want to build up their own satellite constellation, I would say, as independent as possible.
And it's this independence in terms of technological innovation that government bodies want to capitalize on to bolster national defense. Though many believe the world's reliance on Taiwan semiconductors gives it a so-called silicon shield, there's more than just chips keeping the country secure. Justin Wu, Jaime Ocon, and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo has met with her Chinese counterpart in Beijing. Raimondo and Wang Wentao spoke about improving trade ties. She said it is profoundly important for the two economies to have a stable relationship. Raimondo is on a 4-day visit to Beijing and Shanghai. It's the first time a U.S. Commerce Secretary has visited China in 7 years. Her trip comes as tensions between the U.S. and China are rising, with both countries putting restrictions on the other's technology sectors. Coming up, we see how a young circus artist bonds with his Diablo with passion at the prestigious Cloudgate Theater in New Taipei. We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's Up Taiwan? Weekdays on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Joyce Zhen in Bangkok, Thailand, and you're watching TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Dozens of people have taken to the streets of Taipei to show their support for Taiwan's Metoo movement. The protesters are calling for lasting social change after a flood of sexual harassment cases that has rocked Taiwanese society. Yu Jing Huang has the story.
As the rain pours, demonstrators march through downtown Taipei to raise awareness of Taiwan's Metoo movement. where multiple people have come forward to accuse high-profile figures of sexual misconduct. They chant "No more silence" and share their message with signs and loudspeakers.
Organizers have also laid out sheets of information explaining what sexual violence survivors may face and where they can turn to seek help.
The march has been arranged by a group of university students who don't want the movement to stay stuck online.
现在很多 Metoo 的相关事件的讨论都集中在网络上，可是网络上面的讨论很容易聚集在某一些名人的身上，或者是大家的言论有的时候会往极端的两个方向去，其实是没有进行到真的沟通的。
Taiwan's recent Metoo movement started in May, after the release of the Netflix series Wavemakers. Set during an election campaign, the Taiwanese show addresses themes of sexual violence and power imbalances, where one of the characters experiences sexual harassment and other misconduct. After the show aired, a woman who had worked for Taiwan's ruling party wrote online about her own story of workplace harassment. This resonated with many people in Taiwan, who also took to the internet to tell of similar experiences. One of the demonstrators is Zhu Yijun. As a survivor of sexual misconduct, she says it's important to take a highly visible stand and show other victims that they are not alone.
今天我想站出来，就是因为我觉得很多人都很害怕，但是我想要告诉你们，就是你们不会孤单，然后，我会一直陪着你们，然后我希望我的勇气可以一直伴随你们，这样。
Also at the march was lawmaker Fan Yun of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. 3 years ago, Fan filed a lawsuit against an opposition lawmaker for touching her inappropriately. In June, she won her final appeal.
性骚扰的本质其实就是权力不对等，纵容性骚扰的文化就是关键。而改变文化真的比我们在立法院改变法治困难非常非常的多。未来我们需要透过长期的教育。我想今天这么多年轻的朋友站出来，就是看到文化需要改变，希望我们每一个人一起勇敢的发声。
Another goal of the march is to remind people that victims of sexual harassment and misconduct are not always just women. There are issues that also affect men and people from the LGBTQ community.
这次 Metoo 的就是从5月到现在，其实也有不乏有男性受害者的声音，只是说可能因为他们有各种不同的，因为社会的刻板印象，觉得说一定要坚强啊、独立，或者说就是不能够展现他们脆弱的一面。那他们受害的这些事实跟故事就比较不被大家所认知或者被质疑。
The first Metoo march to take place in Taiwan was in 2018. Following on from the movements which swept through the United States. But that time, it didn't take long for the discussion to die down. People at Sunday's demonstration hope this time can be different, as they work to keep this movement alive and push for real social change. Justin Wu and Yujing Huang for TaiwanPlus.
A lawsuit filed against a man who shouted abuse at a transgender woman taxi driver in Kaohsiung has been withdrawn. His outburst was caught on camera. The incident happened early on Saturday morning. The man who was sitting in the cab's passenger seat became enraged when asked to fasten his seatbelt. He then demanded that the driver, Ms. Cho, turn off her music and hurled anti-trans slurs at her. Ms. Cho filed a lawsuit afterwards but withdrew it after the passenger called her and apologized, saying he was drunk.
他没有对我做出什么肢体上的伤害或者身体上的伤害，但是这些言语上的攻击，我觉得我还是得捍卫我的人格啦。他不会去意识到说他今天做的这件事情对其他人来说是一个多么大的伤害。
A beach in Kaohsiung has been closed after balls of tar began appearing there over the weekend. Visitors reported the contamination in the swimming areas and on the sand of Qijin Beach, with several people reportedly getting tar on their bodies. The beach will be closed for several days for the pollution to be cleaned up. Local officials suspect the tar balls could be from a freight ship that sank off the port of Kaohsiung last month. A young circus performer showed off his skills with the Diablo in New Taipei's prestigious Cloudgate Theater over the weekend. He spoke to Sandy Chi about how he came to embrace this traditional form of Chinese performance art.
twirling and tossing effortlessly and perfectly. This is 20-year-old Huang Yi. He is a circus performer who specializes in the Diabolo, an hourglass-shaped juggling tool derived from the Chinese yo-yo. He began practicing the Diabolo at the age of 10, but never really expected it to play an important part in his life.
因为觉得扯铃这东西好帅哦，什么大家都会在下课的时候在走廊这样秀招，然后其他小朋友就会围观，然后就开始因为想要练习更多的招式，加入了扯铃社团。然后因缘际会之下，有这样子表演的能力，可以站到国小的舞台上面去表演。
Over time, Huang developed a strong passion for the traditional art form. He says that sometimes while practicing, he would forget the time and keep the act going up for 12 hours straight.
然后练习杂耍、马戏，或者像这种民俗技艺的人，我们会聚在那里，然后在晚上的时候一起练习。所以这个行为模式持续了好长一段时间，然后我也因此在那边找到了归属感。
After so much time and effort spent working to perfect this art, Huang says he and his Diabolo have become virtually inseparable.
有时候扯铃代言我，或是我照顾他，我引领他，我代言他的状态。我觉得这样子的一些很魔幻的时刻，是可以透过马戏演出被我分享出来的。
Huang now intends to showcase his art before wider audiences, and just had a show at the Cloudgate Theatre in New Taipei over the weekend. But while his passion for the Diabolo is unwavering, he's not so sure that everyone else will fully appreciate it, and he worries how that might affect his performances.
我觉得台湾在看马戏，大家好像还比较小心翼翼一点，就是我没办法那么放得开的在舞台上表现我自己，好像我比较多的心力都在我要如何操作这个马戏物件之上。但是在国外的氛围，你可以感觉到每一个表演者他是在道具前面的，道具偶尔会有出现的时候，但多数时候他是依照着自己的想法或是意志在舞台上传达。
But despite these misgivings, Huang is still determined to do his best to show off his skills with the Diabolo to as many people as he can, and hopes his passion for the art form will shine through to all his audiences. Andy Xu and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
The New York Mets baseball club just recently held their annual Taiwan Day, and I traveled to New York to find out more about the event. You can probably guess what New York Mets Taiwan Day is all about just from the name alone. That is, unless if you're unfamiliar with who the Mets are. They're a Major League Baseball team from New York, and every year for the past 18 years, they've dedicated one game to celebrating Taiwan each season. The only year the Mets didn't celebrate Taiwan Day was in 2020, when COVID put a stop to events. In 2023, though, Taiwan Day continues as a proud Mets tradition.
This is our 18th season to host Mets Taiwan Day. It was back in 2005 that we first started this event.
So, how did this near two-decade tradition get its start?
Back in the days, we were get in touch with a lot of community leaders. We tried to attract more fans around the communities in Queens or the tri-state area in general. So we thought creating those different heritage nights would attract more fans and then, get more tied into our community as well.
And Taiwan Day has done its job attracting fans of Taiwan. It's a highly anticipated annual event for the community. Team estimates show that 4,000 to 5,000 Taiwanese fans attend each year.
A lot of fans, they don't come to baseball games, but this is the one game that they know they have to be here.
Taiwan Day has gotten so big that last year, Taiwan's president got involved.
Hi, Mets fans. It's wonderful to see you all again on this year's Mets Taiwan Day. I'm sure that baseball fans in Taiwan.
This year's Taiwan Day took place on Sunday, featuring performances from the Rakuten Girls, baseball cheerleaders from Taiwan.
We've been trying to get more Taiwanese baseball atmosphere here at Citi Field.
That atmosphere was on full display in March during the World Baseball Classic. Taiwan was one of the international competition's host countries, and the country drew worldwide sports headlines for its over-the-top, hyped-up, fan-driven ballpark experience, at the core of which are cheerleaders like the Rakuten Girls. So eager were American sports fans to learn more about Taiwanese baseball culture that the Rakuten girls were also featured at other Taiwan days in Oakland and Los Angeles, California. But if cheerleaders aren't your thing, maybe freebies are. Each Taiwan Day, the Mets try to come up with an appropriately themed souvenir to give away.
After 2019, we had some crazy idea that we make some jerseys that have Taiwan in the back, number one. It's kind of like a funny thing, right? So that was a crazy idea that we had, and since then, our number has been double, triple.
The Mets aren't the only major league team to host Taiwan Day. Teams like the Athletics, Angels, and Dodgers also have dedicated Taiwanese heritage events. And the event's spread proves that baseball lovers in the US and Taiwan certainly have something to share. Taiwan Day takes place at Citi Field, the home of the New York Mets. So odds are the fans who come to watch the game will be rooting for the home team. But on Taiwan Day, as long as you're a fan of Taiwan, you're a winner the moment you step into the baseball stadium. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, we leave you with images of London's annual Notting Hill Carnival. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.